Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. We just got to see a brand new preview build for Gothic Remake. This is like the vertical slice of the game, where the player can go through the beginning area, explore the old camp, the old mine, and the vicinity of the old camp. We got to see a very nice chunk of the early gameplay, some new systems like the economy, different difficulty settings, exploration, and more. THQ was very strict when it comes to this preview build, so unfortunately I could not get my hands on it. Even so, I analyzed the footage from other creators and media, compiled the most important info, or the info that I found the most interesting, and I'm also going to give you my honest opinion about this preview build. So I will use the footage from other creators and properly credit everyone while I talk about this preview builds. I honestly thought I won't have to do this anymore after I made the last preview video about Remake. But Alchemia surprised us with another demo with a much more restricted access, unfortunately. Anyway, let's talk about it, shall we?
Sounds like a tricky job.
I heard he's dead.
What's in it for me?
The scale of the open world is noticeably bigger in the remake. This was one of the talking points in the preview video from the German gaming media website called GameStar. They did some comparisons between the old areas in the original game and those same areas in the remake. It's not a drastic difference, but it's definitely noticeable, especially when you put them side by side. The remake looks much more realistic when it comes to this, and I really like what I could see here. More importantly, the atmosphere in general seems to be on point, and people who got to play the preview build seem to agree on this, but more about this a bit later. The original game did not have the sprint ability by default. You could only sprint by using a special potion you could get in the game, but the remake includes this ability from the very beginning. Since the map is noticeably bigger in general, it makes sense to have a default sprinting ability from the very beginning, and just in general. Same goes for the sneaking ability. Sneaking is now a skill that's automatically unlocked from the very beginning. You can do it by default, unlike in the original. I don't think this is a huge deal, to be honest. And as a matter of fact, I always thought it's very silly that you even need to learn how to sneak. I mean, I get the idea behind it, but I think this makes a bit more sense. What's actually stopping your character from crouching and sneaking around? I mean, the sneaking skill itself is something different, but it's not like the game has a deeper stealth system. Putting that aside, one of the first things that caught my attention from these preview videos are some of the new skills we can learn from the combat trainer. Especially the one that says, can cancel attacks and recoveries using dodge. If you watched some of my previous previews where I talked about the combat changes, you might remember the part where I mentioned this. It was one of the major combat changes in that updates. I think skills like this could make the combat feel way snappier in general, and it's a welcoming new combat feature. As well as the new finisher attacks that you can learn, which I also showcased in one of the previous updates. Considering that most people who play the preview think the combat and the gameplay in general in the remake is definitely a bit janky, learning such skills should substantially improve the feeling of the combats. Now, obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about, maybe that's not the case at all, I will have to try the game out for myself. But that would be the best case scenario. We all know that the hero must be very weak in the beginning for the progression system to work as intended in Gothic. Then again, that doesn't mean the controls have to be sluggish or unresponsive, but you should almost have no chance of beating tougher enemies without learning new skills and getting new gear. My point is, learning skills like this should be a huge deal in combat that's going to be instantly noticeable. A couple of more skills from the same trainer that were interesting to see are the riposte after parry and knockback effects. Again, I covered all of this in that big combat update a couple of months ago, but it's very cool to see it in the game and how you get to acquire them. I was wondering about the cost for such abilities, and they ended up being pretty expensive, as I expected. These skills have a pretty high cost, as they should, but I only hope they end up being very impactful in combat and not underwhelming. I have to wonder how they're going to find a good balance of skill-based combat and character progression. Gothic Remake aims to be a more skill-based game in general, but the main focus should still be on the progression system. Even though Gothic Remake will include more skill-based abilities, you should not be able to kill very strong enemies until your character is ready. And all of this will come down to the balancing of the game, which is one of my biggest concerns for the remake.
Take a guess what my answer's gonna depend on.
Remember the last time we talked about the fire lizards and how they seem very weak in that video about the new quest in the game? Well, now we know for sure that the player in that video was playing the game on easiest difficulty, which would be novice. I mean, I'm pretty sure that was the case, which brings us to the difficulty modes. This new preview build showed us everything we need to know about the different difficulty options we have in the remake. Novice is the easiest difficulty, where enemies are weaker, traders offer better deals, and you gain experience faster. Gothic difficulty seems to be the default difficulty that's recommended to most people. It offers moderate challenge and fair progression rates. Hard difficulty is supposed to have tougher enemies, traders with less generous offers, and less experience gains in general. A brand new feature that you can activate now if you end up loving the game is permadeath. My opinion about all of this is not very positive, to be honest, and it only makes me more worried about the general balancing of the game. First of all, I don't think the remake should even have difficulty options. Having a universal difficulty would be much more Gothic-like, if you ask me. Not to mention that it will probably be easier to properly balance the game and ensure that all people are getting the same gameplay experience. Pretty important in a game where the progression system is a crucial thing to get right. So I don't see the point in having an easy difficulty, because you will not get to experience what Gothic is all about. You could make an argument that having a harder difficulty makes more sense, and permadeath option is also a welcoming feature. But easy difficulty just doesn't make any sense to me, and most people who played Gothic will understand this. Starting out as a wimp that will struggle with mole rats, and by the end of the game you're basically able to kill a god. All while having a very enjoyable and impactful progression system along the way, where every new level and a new piece of gear help you overcome the challenge and reduce the friction. So you must experience some friction in the beginning, but the novice difficulty will probably disregard all of that. So people who end up choosing to play the game like this are missing out on the core Gothic experience. It's a baffling design decision in my opinion, but I hope it's not as bad as I think it will be. Alchemia and THQ are obviously trying to appeal to new players who never played Gothic before. But I believe there are much better ways to do that instead of changing the core gameplay experience. As long as the Gothic and hard difficulties manage to offer a somewhat Gothic-like experience, I won't care that much about the new difficulty settings. I know that some Gothic games like Gothic 3 and other Piranha Bytes games had difficulty options, but that's not my point.
I know that, you moron!
It's not like I'm against different difficulty options in games, but I personally think they have no place in a game that's trying to be Gothic-like. On the other hand, having the custom difficulty where you get to pick and choose different options for particular features in the game is not that bad. But ultimately, it's kind of pointless. Why would you mess with the progression system, economy, or the combat individually? I would prefer if none of this exists, and that everyone gets to experience the same game. Which is simply not possible while having so many difficulty options. It can only confuse new players. And it's not like the original Gothic was this extremely hard game. The control scheme made it janky and awkward for sure, but that's pretty much gone in the remake. I mean sure, even the remake seems to be janky to some extent, but not in the same way like the original. So the remake instantly has less friction compared to the original and smaller barrier to entry, yet they decided to include multiple difficulty options for some reason. I don't get it, but I hope it's not going to be a huge deal. Permadeath is quite possibly the best new option here. It will be a very niche way to play the game, but people who end up loving it will probably consider playing like this for their second or third playthrough. It might be a fun challenge, and if I end up liking the game, I might even try to do it live on stream. Mole rats have a cool little mechanic when they go under the ground before attacking. This is one of the weakest enemies in the game, but it's very cool to see new mechanics added to them. Which also makes me think about some stronger enemies that you can encounter later in the game, and if those enemies have similar new mechanics, that would be awesome to see.
If there's a way out of here, I'll find it.
The remake is doing something really cool with the economy. Traders will now actually sell items between themselves and restock their inventories. They will earn more ore by doing this, which is the main currency in Gothic. So the next time you come back to trade with them, you might find them with more ore and items. What's perhaps the most interesting thing about the new economy system is the supply and demand feature. Mortismal Gaming talked about this in his video, and I thought it's really freaking cool. The price of some of these items will be affected by the quantity of the said item. If the merchant has a larger quantities of the same item, the price will go down. It's a pretty cool little feature and it makes sense. The economy wasn't that great in the original game and there were a couple of cheap ways to get rich very fast. So I hope the economy in the remake is much better, especially because it also introduced some more expensive things to buy. So far, the new economy system seems pretty interesting and a bit more complex compared to the original. Speaking of improvements, Alchemia was also talking about how they plan to improve the AI in the game and make the world feel more alive. It seems like the preview build had some problems with the buggy AI, but according to THQ's community managers on Discord, these issues have already been resolved in the latest version of the game. Regarding those improvements, some people mentioned very nice additions to NPC schedules. For example, the old mine is now completely open, and if I understood correctly, there are no loading screens. This instantly makes the remake a bit more immersive, not only because you can enter and exit seamlessly, but because NPCs can do it as well. If you're not familiar how Gothic works, all NPCs have their own little lives in the colony. It was really impressive, especially for a 2001 open world RPG. So we'll get to see even more activity when it comes to NPCs' lives in the remake. Miners will go to the mine and collect ore, then come back to the camp, and we mentioned something similar in the last video for the Brotherhood NPCs. You can stumble upon various NPCs in the open world now, who are doing their own thing and moving around. This also means more movement and activities in camps. This was one of my biggest concerns about the remake in general, so I hope NPC's AI works as intended in the release version of the game. It's not easy to get these kinds of systems to work properly, and there is a reason why most developers don't even try to do something similar. Mortismal Gaming said in his video that these kinds of systems are not so uncommon nowadays, and I would have to disagree actually. There are only a handful of RPGs that even try to have complex AI schedules, and even those that try usually end up being pretty underwhelming. GameStar mentioned a nice little quality of life feature when it comes to quests and maps. As you probably know, getting maps in Gothic games is a big deal. You won't be able to see the in-game map until you buy one, and it's a very simple map in general. The original game had multiple maps that you could get, and some of them would show you where to get the thing you need or where to go next. It's not exactly like modern quest marks for every single quest in the game, and only a handful of main quests work like this. But some quests had more directions, and you would get a small piece of the same map with those directions, or something similar to that. Gothic Remake simply puts a mark on your map when you get the info you need for that particular quest, and you can simply turn it on or off. Again, this shouldn't happen for all quests, it was just for a handful of main quests in the original game. You'll still have to find your way around the colony when doing quests, and the map will only help you a little bit. The remake also has brand new quests, so it will be interesting to see how they pull it off, and what's the general quality of the new contents. We got to see a brand new side quest in the previous showcase that I covered, which was just a simple side quest. But I'm wondering about some new, deeper quests with more story elements, that's yet to be seen. Anyway, it seems like most people that covered the preview can agree on one thing. Gothic Remake feels like a Gothic game. Now, obviously this might be a bit subjective, but I think it's a very good sign. I also think it's not so hard to believe, especially because of the atmosphere in the game. The old camp looks amazing from all the footage we got to see, and all of the exploration footage looks great as well, especially those segments where you get to hear the sound effects and the music. The vicinity of the old camp and some other random footage from the map also looks very good in general. People seem to be very positive about these aspects of the remake in general, which is a great sign. However, I saw a lot of comments in my previous videos about the graphics, and not all of them are positive. I personally think the remake looks good enough. I never expected some crazy graphics from this game. On the other side, more than a few people who got to play this preview build had the same criticism about the visual clarity of the game, especially at nights. I believe GameStar talked about the visual clutter and how annoying it is to notice items you can interact with. I mean, look, the original game is very old, and this problem was non-existent because the open world wasn't so detailed. The modern games, however, have to find a way to make those items stand out, but not to the point where it makes the game less immersive. Especially in a game like Gothic, where immersion is really important. It's not an easy task, that's for sure, but it's yet to be seen if Alchemia will do something about it. I honestly don't see a good solution for this problem without making these items look way out of place. Personally, I can deal with a little bit of visual clutter, it's fine by me.
I guess that's one way to put it.
The game can be really dark, that's something that people said about these preview builds. I would have to play the game for myself to give you my honest opinion about this. However, I don't think that's a problem. I actually prefer when games are not afraid of being very dark at night. Although some people were talking about the default brightness even during the day, where some areas look very dark. I think this can also depend on the weather conditions as well. Even if we compare two different playthroughs of the preview build, we can see drastically different openings of the first chapter. I'm not exactly sure if this is just time of the day or a different weather effect on top of it, or both. We already know that the remake will have various weather conditions and effects, and at least some of them can affect the visibility. Also, using a torch in dark places in Gothic games is nothing new. But this could be annoying if it happens a lot during the day in some areas. Maybe it's just about some brightness level settings that could be tweaked by Alchemia for the final release. But I certainly don't agree when it comes to the night time. I prefer when nights are very dark in RPGs, which also opens up the possibility for some unique features. Dragon's Dogma 1 comes to mind, when zombies start coming out of the ground only at night, and the night itself is very dark, so we have to use the lantern all the time. Gothic was nowhere near as extreme as that game during the night, but I think it's the perfect chance for the remake to make the nighttime more interesting in general. This is just wishful thinking, but it's also not far away from the truth, considering the complex AI schedules for NPCs. Whatever the case might be, the night gameplay is definitely going to be at least a little bit different compared to daytime. I mean, that was the case even in the original game. To sum it up, the atmosphere truly looks like it's going to be top-notch in this game. And we also can't forget about the amazing music from Kai Rosenkrantz. It's a mix of old, remastered tracks, remixed tracks from the original, and the remake also has brand new tracks as well. So yeah, nailing the dark and gloomy atmosphere of the first game was definitely not an easy task, but it seems like Alchemia managed to do this properly. And that would be everything I wanted to cover here. This was an unexpected new preview build for the game, right before the actual game has to come out. We're less than a month away from the release date. Anyway, tell me your opinion about all of this in the comments below. How does the game look to you, and will you be interested in checking it out? As always, I recommend waiting for reviews before you decide to spend your money, and of course, I will be reviewing the game as well, and probably much more than that if I end up liking the remake. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.